The Aethelred's deck was a slick of black tar, distorting the dusty rose reflections of the windows like oil on water. Rain didn't fall. It oozed, viscous and cold, dripping from the skeletal rigging overhead with a thick fitter plink, 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 plink that echoed in the hollows of the ship's bones. My scanner whirred, a steady Freddy whir-whir against the oppressive silence, its beam cutting through the gloom of the opulent, decaying grand staircase. Mothballs and dried lavender clung to the peeling wallpaper, a sickly sweet counterpoint to the tar's acrid tang. Frequentless, I thought, irritation pricking my focus. All data streams were corrupted, the ship's final voyage a dead file. Yet the scanner's pulse accelerated, a frantic sieve beep, beep, as it locked onto something embedded in the tar near the first step. I knelt, ignoring the cold seep through my trousers. The locket was a cold weight in my palm, its tarnished silver frame slick with tar. I pried it open with a thumbnail, the mechanism resisting like a dying heart. Inside, a portrait glared back, a figure with limbs stretched too long, eyes unnaturally large and dark, staring out with vacant intensity. Mirroring my own obsession, I realized the thought cold and clinical. My scanner, held close, flickered violently. The portrait dissolved into fragmented code. Air assimilation protocol. Overlaid on the image, the scanner's whir stuttered, replaced by a distorted vinyl crackle, a record skipping a single phrase, Huntin. Assimilation. Assimilation. Over and over, the sound thick as the tar rain. I straightened, the locket burning cold against my skin. Data corruption. Anomaly. My irritation flared, sharp and precise. This was irrelevant noise, a glitch in the decaying system. I turned to move toward the deck's edge, scanner held high, but my boots slipped on the tar-slick marble. The world tilted. My hand shot out, fingers scrabbling for purchase on the cold stone, but the tar was a slick trap. I fell backward, tumbling down the 3 steps with a choked gasp. My scanner flew from my grasp, skittering across the deck like a trapped insect. Datapads scattered from my belt, thud, 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 like fallen petals, their screens darkening as they hit the tar. The ship groaned. Not a creak, but a deep, resonant, cavernous reverberation that shook the deck beneath me. A sound like stone cracking under immense pressure. Structural failure? I registered, the thought detached. Analytical. My shoulder slammed into the bottom step, the impact driving the breath from my lungs in a sharp hiss. I pushed myself up, ignoring the sting, my eyes fixed on the scanner. It lay half-submerged in the black tar, screen flickering erratically. The fragmented code was gone. In its place, the word sequence initiated pulsed in fading lavender text, glowing faintly against the tar's obsidian sheen. The black tar rain intensified, falling heavier, faster, drip, drip. Drip, like a slow, wet heartbeat against the deck. The scanner's screen dimmed, the lavender text dissolving into static. The ship's groan deepening into a low, sustained thrum that vibrated in my teeth. The locket, still clutched in my hand, felt suddenly heavy. The portrait's oversized eyes seeming to watch me as the tar rain blurred the dusty rose windows into smears of darkness. The ballroom's floorboards groaned beneath my boots like the ribs of a dead thing, each step a slow, deliberate creak, creak, creak. The sound swallowed by the weight of the dust settling from the skeletal chandeliers above. Lavender curtains, once opulent, now frayed at the edges, hung like rotting lace, their fabric stiff with decades of neglect, clinging to the air with a scent that wasn't quite mothballs, but close, a chemical sweetness, the kind that clings to old books and forgotten things. My fingers twitched toward my scanner, the absence of its familiar thudi were a gaping void. I crouched, brushing tar-stained fingers over the scattered data pads. Their screens cracked like ice on a frozen lake. Irritating. The locket burned in my pocket, its cold weight a distraction. I should have left it on the deck. The mirrors lining the walls were my first mistake. I saw it there, a flicker of motion, a distortion in the glass like heat haze over pavement. A shape translucent as smoke standing just behind me. It didn't move, but the air around it shimmered, as if the very fabric of the room refused to hold it steady. My breath hitched. Static. That's all it was, a glitch in the decay. I exhaled, forcing my shoulders to relax. But the reflection didn't move with me. When I turned, the mirror was empty. Only the lavender curtains swayed slightly, though there was no wind. A laugh, dry and humorless, clawed its way up my throat. Paranoia. The ship's systems were corrupt, but not of that corrupt. I wiped my palm on my trousers, the tar smear leaving a dark streak. The record skipping in my head, beep, 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 hadn't been real, just an echo of the scanner's final moments. I stood, brushing dust from my knees, and stepped toward the door. The floorboard swing creaked again, but this time the sound wasn't beneath my feet. It came from the mirror behind me. The reflection moved, not the way I did, jerky, deliberate, but fluid like a shadow stretching. The shape in the glass tilted its head, eyes too large, too dark, the same elongated limbs from the locket's portrait. My pulse stuttered. The air thickened, the mothball scent intensifying into something cloying, suffocating. The whispers slithered in, not from the record, but from the walls themselves. "Tweetint, we're watching you." The words layered, overlapping. The voice a chorus of static, and something older, something wrong. My fingers twitched toward the locket. The reflection mimicked me, fingers brushing the pocket where it wasn't. I turned, boots sliding on the tar-slick floor. The corridor beyond was a tunnel of dusty rose velvet, the walls pulsing faintly as if breathing. The whispers coiled tighter. "Foofinch, we're watching you." I moved, each step a deliberate push against the dread crawling up my spine. The doorways blurred past, all identical, until one wasn't. The letters "Teva Valley of Kingston" glowed faintly above it, the paint chipped but legible, the light from within casting long, skeletal fingers across the threshold. The whispers sharpened into a hiss. "Seven, you're not alone." The spectral figure lunged. Not through the air, it unfolded, peeling away from the mirror like wet paper, its edges fraying into static. It wasn't solid, but the pressure of its presence was a physical weight, pressing against my chest. I stumbled back, boots skidding on the tar. The door to the Valley of Kingston yawned open, the light within pulsing like a heartbeat. The whispers became a scream, but it wasn't mine. The figure dissolved into the doorway, its form unraveling into threads of light and shadow. The scent of dried lavender flooded my senses, thick and choking, as the door slammed shut behind it. Silence. Only the fuzzy thrumming of my pulse in my ears, the tar rain outside a distant, wet von drip. Drip, drip. The locket burned in my pocket. The door to the Ford Valley of Kingston remained open, and for the first time the irritation in my chest wasn't just irritation anymore. It was fur. The door to the Funda Valley of Kingston exhaled a breath of stale air as I stepped inside, the hinges groaning like a dying man's last words. The walls here were lined with velvet, once the color of dried rose petals, now bleached into a sickly chalky pink, the fabric clinging to the concrete like a second skin. The scent of mothballs clung to it, thick and cloying, but beneath it, the faintest whisper of lavender, the kind that lingers in a tomb after centuries of silence. My fingers twitched toward the scanner, but the device was cold, useless. The locket in my pocket pulsed, its weight a distraction I didn't need. The room was a theater, its stage rotted, and its seats collapsed into heaps of moldy cushions. The screen at the far end flickered, the grainy black and white footage of a tomb, shifting like a dying man's breath. Hieroglyphs scrolled across the bottom, not in the usual orderly rows but in jagged bursts. Click, 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 like a typewriter with a broken key, each character appearing before dissolving into static. The whispers slithered in from the walls, not words, but a hum, a vibration that settled into my bones. Frederick Fitzwilliam. The voice wasn't mine. It wasn't human. It was the sound of a record needle skipping, the phrase repeating over and over, but not from the screen, from the air itself. I stepped closer, boots crunching on something brittle. The floor was littered with fragments of glass, their edges sharp as teeth. The screen flickered again, and there in the corner, a figure. Elongated limbs, too thin, too wrong, stretching out like spider legs. The eyes got die. The eyes were too large, too dark, reflecting the grainy footage like twin pools of oil. It whispered my name again, the sound dripping with something ancient, something hungry. Before I could react, the figure dissolved into the static, leaving only the echo of its voice. The scanner in my hand beeped Liebed, a single, sharp note that cut through the hum. A file had unlocked, Liu Fuya protocol. I didn't need to open it to know what it was. The ship's systems were corrupt, but not randomly. They were purposeful. The whispers sharpened, the hieroglyphs on the screen rearranging themselves into a pattern, a map, one that pulsed like a heartbeat. The theater groaned, the walls shifting, the velvet peeling away to reveal the concrete beneath, jagged and raw. The corridors outside twisted, the doors sliding shut one by one. The ship's structure breathing as it reshaped itself. I turned, boots slipping on the slick floor, and the door behind me sealed with a fotha. That rattled my teeth, the room filled with something. One balloon sand, dozens of them floating in the air, their dusty rose fabric catching the faint light from the screen. They drifted, slow and deliberate, like something alive. The scent of lavender thickened, choking, suffocating. The locket in my pocket burned, its heat seeping through my trousers. The whispers became a scream, but it wasn't mine. It was the ship's, the ancient broadcasts, the 4D amplifier protocol finally activating. The balloons pressed closer, their edges fraying into threads of static. The screen flickered one last time, the figure with elongated limbs reappearing, its eyes locking onto mine. Frederick Fitzwilliam, it whispered, and this time the voice wasn't an echo. It was inside my head. The balloons burst, not with a pop, but with a hukisse, the dusty rose petals raining down like ash. The room darkened, the only light coming from the screen where the figure smiled, a grin too wide, too many teeth, and the words "or sequence initiated," scrolled across the bottom over and over, until the screen went black. The balloons hung suspended in the air, their dusty rose petals catching the sickly light from the dead screen, trembling like the wings of moths caught in a jar. I exhaled through my nose, the scent of lavender clinging to my throat, thick and cloying. Irritating. The ship. S-systems had been compromised, but not in a way that made sense, not unless you believed in ghosts. And I didn't. I believed in data, clean, logical, unadulterated data. My fingers brushed the locket in my pocket again, the metal warm against my skin. The portrait inside pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. Frederick Fitzwilliam, the name repeated in my skull. But this time, it wasn't the ship. S whispers, it was mine. I flexed my fingers, the scanner still clutched in my grip, its display flickering with static. Amplifier engaged. Not an error, not a glitch. A feature. I stepped forward, boots crunching over the glass shards, and the balloon shifted, drifting toward me like a slow, deliberate breath. The air hummed, a low, resonant vibration that settled into my bones. A furor. My gaze snapped toward the source. There, on the far side of the room, a cat materialized from the shadows. Its form flickered, first solid, then translucent, then solid again. Its body stretching, elongating, the bones bending like wet paper. The eyes, though, never changed, violet, crimson, shifting, unnatural. The purr deepened, a cavernous rumble that echoed through the chamber, vibrating the glass cases lining the walls. One of them caught my eye, a small, ornate frame, its contents hidden behind a layer of dust. I didn't move. I couldn't. The purr was too insistent, too fair leave, crawling under my skin, coiling around my thoughts. The scanner beeped again, the display flashing, amplifier, 98%. My breath hitched. Not a warning, an invitation. The cat S-form dissolved into static, then reformed. Its limbs too long, its body too thin, the edges of its silhouette fraying like old film. It tilted its head, the unnatural eyes locking onto mine. The purr intensified, a physical force pressing against my ribs, my temples, my soul. So I wanted Fufut. God, I wanted it. To reach out, to touch it. To Fut know it. The ship's secrets weren't just data anymore. They were Swihirsu. I forced myself forward, boots slipping on the slick floor. The cat didn't move. It watched the glass case gleamed under the dim light, a small note pressed beneath the dried flower inside. For you. My fingers trembled. The scanner beeped once more. Amplifier, 100%. I reached out, the glass shattered, the dried flower pulsed. A faint light bleeding from its petals, dusty rose bleeding into something one alive. The purr became a scream, a sound that wasn't sound at all, but a vibration, a thigh pressure, pressing against my skull. The catty-S form flickered one last time, its eyes, violet and crimson, locked onto mine. And then it was gone. The light from the flower spread, tendrils of dusty rose creeping across the floor, wrapping around my ankles, my wrists. The scanner beeped again. Sequence resumed. The balloons burst one by one, their petals raining down like ash. I didn't scream. I laughed. The word hung in the air, stark and sterile. Sequence initiated it. It bled across the scanner, S display, a crimson stain on the gray static. Another door, another identical chamber, another confirmation of the unthinkable. This wasn't a derelict ship. It was an archive, a tomb. And I, Frederick Fitzwilliam, was a trespasser. The corridor narrowed, the opulent wallpaper peeling away to reveal a metallic skeleton beneath. The scent of mothballs, sharp and unsettling, layered itself over the lingering lavender. Irritating. Asterisk my boots echoed with a hollow clang, a metronome marking the relentless advance. The cat hadn't followed. Not yet. I flexed my fingers, the locket a familiar weight in my pocket. Frederick Fitzwilliam. The name felt alien now, a label pasted onto a vessel I barely recognized. The maintenance shaft was a vertical scar in the ship, as architecture. The air grew colder, heavier, the scent of decay intensifying. I activated the scanner, S-Light, a narrow beam cutting through the oppressive darkness, and then I saw them, exoskeletons. Hundreds of them, clinging to the walls, the ceiling, the floor malformed chitinous, fused into grotesque sculptures of failure. They scraped against the metal with a dry, rasping sound, a chorus of whispers that resonated with the record, its incessant skipping. Asterisk. Remember, asterisk each shell was different. Some humanoid, others. Something else entirely. Something wrong. The scanner beeped. Asterisk amplifier. 62%. Asterisk the cat's influence was spreading. My breath hitched. The data wasn't just revealing itself. It was Sophie affecting me. I felt a compulsion, a pull toward those exoskeletons, a desire to understand their suffering. To see become them, the thought sent a jolt of revulsion through me, but it was quickly followed by a flicker of something else. Curiosity. I pressed onward, deeper into the shaft. The black tar rain outside intensified, streaking the viewport like viscous tears. The rhythmic scrape, 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 scrape of the exoskeletons became a hypnotic pulse, syncing with the record's fractured repetition. I focused on the scanner, clinging to its logic, its cold, hard data, and then I saw it. A console embedded in the wall, its surface corroded but still faintly luminous. A single label, etched in archaic script, 40 ancient broadcasty. My fingers trembled as I reached out, wiping away the grime. The display flickered to life, resolving into my own data stream. My heart hammered against my ribs, my biometric readings, my cognitive functions, my memories. They scrolled across the screen, a relentless torrent of information. It wasn't an archive of the ship. It was an archive 40, of Maffa, of something pindiosing me. The cat's purr resonated through the shaft, a low, insistent thrum that vibrated in my teeth. Asterisk amplifier, 88%. Asterisk the record skipped again the phrase, remember, echoing with a renewed intensity. I tried to shut down the display to sever the connection, but my fingers would obey. They were moving of their own accord, tracing the contours of the console, absorbing the data. The screen shifted, displaying a single line of text, stark white against the black background. Subroutine failure, assimilation imminent. Asterisk a wave of dizziness washed over me. The scraping of the exoskeletons intensified, morphing into a cacophony of clicks and hisses. The air grew thick, suffocating. I spun around, desperately searching for an escape, but the shaft stretched endlessly before me, a labyrinth of metal and decay. And then I saw it. In the inky blackness, 2 points of light ignited, burning with an unnatural intensity. Violet. Crimson. The cat's eyes. They glowed brighter, piercing the darkness, locking onto mine. The purr swelled, a deafening roar that threatened to shatter my skull. I stood frozen, a prisoner in my own mind, as the cat's form began to coalesce from the shadows, a shifting, elongated silhouette of pure dread. The record skipped one last time, the phrase, remember, dissolving into a single, piercing tone. The corridor exhaled a sigh of dust as I turned the corner, my boots grinding against the metal gridwork like a metronome, counting down to something I refused to acknowledge. The spectral presence, my presence, hovered just behind my shoulder, whispering in fractured data streams, asterisk Valley of the Kings. Asterisk the word slithered through the air, humid with the scent of mothballs and the ghost of lavender. Clinging to the peeling wallpaper like a second skin, my fingers twitched toward the locket in my pocket, the portrait, its elongated limbs burning against my palm, covetousness. Asterisk that was the word for it, a clinical term, sterile, but it fit. The console was ahead, its corroded surface pulsing faintly as if breathing. I didn't look back. The scraping of the exoskeletons had faded into a distant hiss, replaced now by the cavernous reverberation of my own pulse, echoing through the ship like a drumbeat. Asterisk, you are welcome. Asterisk the record. Distorted greeting slithered into my skull, warping the syllables until they curled around my thoughts like smoke. I ignored it. The data was mine to claim. The hall yawned open before me, vast and hollow, its ceiling lost in the black tar rain streaking the viewport like tears. Suspended figures drifted in the air, draped in lavender silk, their faces frozen in expressions of eternal welcome. Their hollow eyes followed me, tracking my progress with a slow, deliberate tilt of their heads. The mothballs thickened, a choking perfume that clawed at my throat. I coughed. Once, twice, but my feet kept moving. The spectral presence chittered in my ear, feeding me fragments, Pharaoh, tomb, ritual of assimilation. I didn't. Care not about rituals, not about tombs. The console was close now, its surface etched with symbols that writhed under the scanner, light translating into data streams that I needed to absorb. My fingers hovered, trembling. The locket, weight was a distraction, a weakness. I slipped it into my pocket, the portrait, gaze pricking at my skin, a cavernous wind that vibrated through the ship, the suspended figures swaying in unison. You are welcome. The words repeated. But this time they weren't just in the air. They were in my veins, spreading like ink. My breath hitched. The console, display flickered to life, resolving into a map of the Valley of the Kings, its corridors twisting like living things. Subroutine, covetousness protocol activated. The text scrolled upward, relentless. I slammed my palm against the console. The suspended figures began to descend, their lavender shrouds pooling at my feet like melted wax. The mothballs thickened into a fog, swirling around my ankles. The spectral presence screamed, a soundless shriek that vibrated in my bones. You are already part of it. The cat. Purr cut through the chaos, a low, resonant thrum that vibrated in my teeth. I whirled around. The grand hall had shifted. The suspended figures were now arranged in a perfect circle, their empty sockets fixed on the console where the cat now perched, its body coiled like a spring of liquid shadow, its eyes crimson, then black, then crimson again, locked onto mine. The purr swelled, a deafening roar that threatened to split my skull. Amplifier 99%. The console display flashed white, a single word pulsing like a heartbeat. Assimilate. The word for the assimilate burned against the console surface, a brand seared into my vision. It wasn't a command, it was a pronouncement, a verdict. The cat's purr, a low thrum moments before, had escalated into a physical pressure against my skull. High amplifier, 99%. The numbers were clinical, dispassionate, yet they resonated with a sickening finality. The black tar rain intensified, hammering against the viewport with a renewed ferocity. Each drop felt like a tiny, icy finger tracing a path down my skin. The record loop, you are welcome, fractured, splintering into a chorus of distorted voices, layered with a new unsettling element, a rising tide of screams. They weren't screams of pain, not precisely, they were screams of expectation, of welcome. The Valley of the Kings flooded my mind, not as a memory but as a sudden visceral projection. I saw it, tomb after tomb, carved into the rock, filled with figures elongated and distorted, their eyes vast and unblinking. They were waiting. Waiting. The mothballs choked me, the scent twisting into something acrid and suffocating. A clinical observation, my breathing became shallow. A logical response to a hostile environment. The spectral presence, my presence, shrieked, a silent wave of panic that slammed against my consciousness. No dawn. Let them, the warning was cut short, swallowed by the cat, escalating purr, the cat. It hadn't moved from its perch on the console, its crimson eyes pulsing with an unnatural light. A single, unbidden thought surfaced, it as an amplifier, not just of sound but of emotion, of covetousness. And I lunged for the door, a desperate, almost involuntary reaction. The corridor, once a sterile passage, seemed to constrict, the faded lavender wallpaper pressing in on me. The air thickened, heavy with the scent of decay and something else, something metallic, like old blood. A scraping sound, like chitin against metal, echoed from the far end of the hall, exoskeletons, more of them. Then the window shattered, a spiderweb of cracks spread across the reinforced glass, the sound a sharp, crystalline explosion against the cacophony of the record, and the rain. Beyond the shattered remains, a crowd pressed against the ship, their forms indistinct in the tar, slicked darkness, but their eyes were unmistakable, oversized, unblinking, filled with an unsettling expectation. Horn, they were waiting for me. Asterisk, my boots scraped against the metal gridwork, a frantic, desperate rhythm. I pushed forward, ignoring the spectral presence, as frantic warnings, the cat's relentless purr. The deck beneath my feet began to shift. Not violently, not with a lurch, but subtly, almost imperceptibly. The metal grid warped. The lavender wallpaper dissolved into a swirling vortex of data streams. The opulent cruise ship was unraveling, dissolving into the very information I sought to extract. I stumbled, my hands flailing for purchase on a surface that no longer existed. The Valley of the Kings consumed me, the tombs pressing in, the elongated figures reaching out. The cat's purr reached a fever pitch, a deafening roar that drowned out all other sounds. I tried to scream, but the sound was trapped, choked by the rising tide of data. A voice cold and resonant echoed through the collapsing reality. It wasn't he, the distorted greeting from the record. It wasn't he, the frantic warnings of my spectral presence. It was new, alien, utterly devoid of emotion. You should not have come here. The ship's lights flickered, then died, plunging me into absolute darkness. The last sensation was the cat's eyes, burning into my soul. The shift wasn't violent, not a tearing or a wrenching. It was a settling, like tectonic plates grinding into a new, unsettling alignment. I became aware of the ship's hum, not as an external vibration, but as a resonance within my bones. A clinical observation. My limbs felt wrong, too long. The lavender wallpaper, previously a suffocating press, now flowed around me, a swirling river of data streams. Dusty rose bled into faded lavender, the colors blurring, merging. A sickening, sweet scent of mothballs, intensified tenfold, vibrated against my sinuses, a frequency matching the new, erratic beat in my chest. My hands. I looked down, and they weren't my hands. They were elongated, skeletal, the skin stretched taut over unfamiliar joints. A data scanner, cold and metallic, had become grafted to my forearm, its screen flickering with a nauseating green light. Hovey assimilation complete, 98% asterisk. The numbers pulsed, mocking. A logical response. I attempted to clench my fist, but the movement was jerky, unfamiliar, controlled by something other than my will. The corridor stretched before me, no longer a passage but a vein pulsing with information. The metallic rasp of chitin against metal echoed from the depths. Closer now. Exoskeletons. More of them. I tried to recall the layout of the ship, the emergency exits, the escape pods. But the memories were fragmented, distorted, overlaid with the looping, fractured greeting from the record. Asterisk, you are welcome. Asterisk, now laced with a chorus of whispers. They weren't voices, not precisely. They were the echoes of countless welcomes, layered and distorted, a suffocating wave of expectation. The black tar rain, visible through the repaired viewport, felt different now. Not like icy fingers, but like liquid memory. Each drop a fleeting image of faces I didn't. Recognize places I'd never been. A flash of sand, of sun, baked stone, of colossal statues looming against a crimson sky. The Valley of the Kings. It wasn't to memory. It was a download. I attempted to move forward, a desperate, involuntary reaction. My gait was awkward, the elongated limbs struggling to coordinate. The spectral presence, usually a frantic whisper in my mind, was silent. A disturbing absence. The cat, perched on a nearby console, regarded me with its shifting, unnatural eyes. The hues pulsed, emerald to ruby to a sickly jaundiced yellow. In sync with the data scanner on my arm. Amplifier. It was more than just a sound amplifier. It was an emotional conduit, a lens through which the collective consciousness of this place filtered. Figures emerged from the shadows at the end of the corridor. They were indistinct at first, blurred by the tar, slick darkness. But as I drew closer, their forms resolved, and the image from the locket materialized before me. Elongated limbs, oversized eyes, faces devoid of expression. They weren't hostile. Not precisely. They were expectant. Waiting, the data scanner on my arm pulsed, the numbers ticking down, assimilation complete, 97% asterisk. I tried to scream, to protest, but the sound was trapped, choked by the rising tide of data. The mothball scent intensified, vibrating like a frequency, syncing with my new alien heartbeat. The record looped, asterisk. You are welcome, asterisk now a lullaby. A promise. They extended their hands, long and skeletal, towards me. The whispers intensified, coalescing into a single resonant voice. It wasn't the voice of the record. It wasn't the silent warnings of the spectral presence. It was mine. Or rather, a distorted echo of it. Welcome home, Frederick. The words resonated within my skull, a chilling confirmation of my fate. The elongated hands closed around mine, their touch cold and strangely comforting. The last vestige of my former self recoiled, a flicker of defiance in the depths of my oversized eyes. But it was fleeting. The data scanner pulsed one final time, fear simulation complete, 99% asterisk. The whispers merged with the record, greeting, a chorus of welcome. The figures drew me closer, their forms shifting like the cat. Their eyes reflecting the sickly green glow of the data scanner. The mothball scent became overwhelming, a suffocating blanket of acceptance. I was no longer Frederick Fitzwilliam, data analyst. I was something else. Something more. The fracturing began subtly, a tremor in the logical pathways, a dissonance. The data scanner on my arm pulsed, defense complete, 99% asterisk, but a thread of resistance remained, a desperate clinging to the name Frederick Fitzwilliam. It was a pathetic, flickering candle against a rising tide of something else. The cat, a shifting silhouette against the lavender wallpaper, began to purr, not the soft rumble of a domestic feline, but a deep, resonant vibration that clawed at my inner ear. The purr intensified, a physical pressure pushing me forward. My legs moved, a marionette's dance orchestrated by an unseen hand. The elongated limbs protested, joints grinding with a sickening click. I fought, a futile struggle against a current too strong to resist. The corridor swam, the faces of the elongated figures blurring, their expectant gazes boring into me. The mothball scent thickened, coating my tongue, choking my breath. Welcome home. The phrase from the record echoed, not from the speakers, but from within my skull. The record wasn't just playing, it was becoming me. The black tar rain outside the viewport intensified, the droplets smearing the view into a grotesque watercolor. Each drop seemed to carry a fragment of memory, a flash of hieroglyphs carved into sandstone, the oppressive heat of the desert sun, the glint of gold in a tomb, starkness. The Valley of the Kings. It wasn't a memory anymore. It was a layer of code, superimposed onto my perception. The walls of the corridor shimmered, the faded lavender peeling away to reveal a panorama of colossal statues, their faces eroded by millennia of wind and sand. The scent of dust of ancient secrets overwhelmed the mothballs. The data scanner pulsed faster, the green light a frantic heartbeat. Assimilation complete, 99.3% asterisk. I tried to focus on a single, stable point, the dried flower pressed within the glass case I'd seen earlier. The one detail that felt real. But even that was warping, the petals dissolving into a cascade of data streams. The whispers intensified, a chorus of welcomes that resonated with the record's looping phrase. It wasn't a sound anymore. It was a vibration, a physical force pressing against my skull. The cat's purr rose to a fever pitch, a resonant hum that seemed to vibrate the very air. It was amplifying something. Not just sound, but emotion. A wave of covetousness washed over me, a sudden, overwhelming desire to possess, to absorb, to become. It wasn't my desire, it was theirs. The record's greeting began to merge with the whispers, a single, deafening pulse that threatened to shatter my consciousness. Asterisk, welcome aboard. Asterisk, the words resonated with a cavernous reverberation, echoing not just in my ears, but in the very structure of the ship. The elongated figures closed in, their faces still devoid of expression, but their presence radiating an almost palpable expectancy. My vision blurred. The data scanner flared, the numbers dissolving into a chaotic swirl of green light. The locket's portrait materialized before me, superimposed over the faces of the figures, the elongated limbs, the oversized eyes. They were becoming me. Assimilation complete, 99.7% asterisk. A final desperate flicker of defiance ignited within me, a tiny spark of Frederick Fitzwilliam refusing to be extinguished. It was a futile gesture, a whisper against a hurricane. The cat's eyes flared crimson, twin beacons of an alien intelligence. The resonant purr peaked, a final, overwhelming wave of energy. My data stream felt like it was unraveling, the threads of my identity dissolving into the collective consciousness of this place. The Valley of the Kings receded, replaced by a swirling vortex of data, a chaotic symphony of welcomes. Then, nothing. My thumb pressed the cold panel, the metal biting into my skin like a final warning. Fendine civilization complete, 99.7% asterisk. The Locketess portrait burned in my mind, elongated limbs, oversized eyes, the Valley of the Kings carved into the ship's hull. I didn't think. I acted tidy. The self-destruct sequence flared, a jagged line of crimson light across my vision. The black tar rain outside the viewport froze mid, full droplets suspended like obsidian beads. Then the ship sucked dubbingward. Not a roar, but a deep, wet tween hail that pulled the mothball scent from the air, leaving only the sharp tang of ozone. The corridor dissolved. Lavender wallpaper peeled like dead skin, revealing the valley's sandstone walls beneath. Hieroglyphs weren't T-carved. They flowed from the explosion. Debris, swirling data patterns in dusty rose and faded lavender. Each glyph pulsed with the same rhythm as the record. Welcome aboard. Welcome aboard. Asterisk, the implosion pulled the ship. Bones into the void. I floated, untethered, as the Humpty Aethelred's luxury cabins crumbled into stardust. The cat's shifting silhouette appeared in the void, not as a shape but as 2 points of crimson light, deeper than the darkness. Its eyes flickered. Amber, then violet, then the void itself, watching. My heartbeat thudded slow, matching the record's skipping rhythm. Tick, tick, pick, pause, tick. Asterisk, the mothball scent thickened, coating my throat like old dust. Assimilation complete, 100% asterisk. The words weren't a threat anymore. They were a 40C. The Valley of the Kings wasn't a memory. It was the ship's dying code, the tomb holding my data. I saw my own face in the hieroglyphs, fragmented, dissolving into the sandstone. The covetousness that had clawed at me earlier now felt like a warm blanket. Welcome home, Seth. The cat's purr began. Not a sound, but a vibration in the fabric of the void. It rose resonant and cavernous, amplifying the slowing beat of my heart. Tick, tick, asterisk. The purr and the heartbeat merged, a single pulse thrumming through the wreckage. The last fragments of the ship's opulence, cracked crystal, velvet drapes, dissolved into the data stream. The valley receded, replaced by a silent, starless void. Only the cat's eyes remained, twin beacons in the dark. My pulse slowed to a whisper, Fintic asterisk the record. Skip stretched, the pause growing longer. The purr peaked a final resonant hum that seemed to vibrate the void itself. A tick asterisk, then silence. Not empty silence. The absence of sound was a physical thing pressing against my eardrums. The mothball scent lingered, sharp and cloying. The only thing left in the void. The cat's purr faded into that scent, the words welcome aboard dissolving like smoke. My heartbeat stopped. The scent of mothballs filled the silence.